Family, we're here at the shrine of Saint Germain de Pibrac in Pibrac, France, and we're here with Jean-Pierre, who has been so helpful to us in bringing this program to you. He's very knowledgeable about all that has gone on in the life of Saint Germain and about the history of the shrine. And so he's going to be helping us throughout this program.
And it's such a gift to be here in the church where she came and she prayed and she received the sacraments. One of the most exciting parts of this story is what we see here. The faithfulness of the people 400 years.
This is 400 years later.
400 years later, and look, they're coming here, they're bringing flowers of petition and thanksgiving.
They sign in when they come.
And
so
yeah,
the devotion.
Here's a book.
Okay, this is the book that the people sign in when they come here, and they have petitions. They petition the saint to help them in their needs. There are stories in just these petitions that the people bring, some in petitions, some in thanksgiving, but they always remember that little saint. She was a very special girl. She was very similar to Margaret of Castello in that she was deformed from birth.
Here was a little girl who was...
She had what they called scrofula, which was almost a tuberculosis of the neck, and she had great welts and pussy sores, and her arm was completely dislocated all of her life.
And so, her father remarried.
He did not want to admit that he was her father. Nobody wanted to admit that they were her parents, but because she was left at his door or something, he had accepted the fact that she was his daughter. And when he remarried, when his wife died and he remarried, the woman he remarried couldn't stand Germaine and did not want her anywhere near her children in the house. And
she was afraid that they would catch whatever she had. I don't know if you can feel it, but I have feelings of wanting to cry and yet to cheer. In this church, you can feel the presence of this little unloved saint who has been loved for 400 years, who has been loving for 400 years. And so this is a holy place.
Now, the one gift that her father allowed her was to go to Sunday Mass. He allowed her to, because they were French and they were Catholic, and that's what Catholics did, so she went to Sunday Mass. But she was introduced to the Eucharist. She made her first Holy Communion, and she was introduced to the gifts of our church. And so then during the week, when she would be way in back there, tending the sheep, she could hear the bells for the Mass. They were going to begin the Mass. And so she wanted desperately to take part in that Mass. That became her whole life, was the Eucharist, the Mass. Going to that Mass, that held her through the day. To all the punishment and the torture and the ill treatment that she received, she could handle all of it as long as she had that time. And so, but she had to take care of the sheep. So we have two miracles that we have to share with you about that. One of them was, and the stepmother had her go to tend the sheep where there were wolves. And she said, and don't let anything happen to those sheep or I will beat you to within an inch of your life. So she had to take care of the sheep and be sure they didn't get attacked by the wolves. And at the same time, she was hearing the sound of the bells of the church,
summoning people to church.
So she had a distaff. This was a staff. She also had to weave wool. She had to weave the cloth, and so she was required to do a certain amount of that every day. So that she carried with her. So she put the distaff into the ground, and she said to the sheep, "Now you stay here and do not move. I'm going to church." And she would leave them, and then she would go to church. And different shepherds would walk by as she was in church for the Mass, and they'd say, look, I can't believe this, look at this.
And they were
These
in a
sheep,
circle.
They were in a circle around the distaff, and they never moved. And the wolves around the back, but they never ever came close to these sheep. Okay, then.
And you know, as the other shepherds knew, and we all know, is that sheep without a shepherd are going to wander. But they never did. And this was every day.
Now, France is like, especially this area of France, they have a tremendous amount of rain. We were here a few years ago where the area of Nimes was flooded so badly from the rain. Well, there's a river that goes through here, and that's where she would tend the sheep. It's called the Courbet River. And every year it would overflow with the rains, and it would be so flooded that it was impassable. But she had to get to church. And so the miracle that we're talking about now is that every day when it was flooded, she would stand at this end of the water, and the water would part. Like in the Red Sea, parting of the Red Sea, and also a miracle of the Eucharist of Avignon, where the water parted, and she would walk across dry land onto the other side, and then she would go to church. The water would come back, and then as she would come back, it would part again, and so she could get across again. And beautiful miracles the Lord gave her.
And you know, she had to sleep in the barn with the sheep. And her life on the surface would look like one of great suffering, but this made up for it. Her Lord, this is what she lived for, and she was not an unhappy child.
And it changed her outlook on everything. It got to the point where the young people of the town could feel something in her, and they would flock around her. And of course, the people of the town could see, she can't be bad if our children are coming all around her. And she would teach the children. Now, here's a girl who never knew how to read or write. She never learned anything. But from here, from this gift she was given here at church, she was able to teach the children about God. And that was all just about God and the love of God. And when you look at somebody like this who really has no reason to be happy or to be thanking God for anything, I mean, what did he really give her as far as the world is concerned? And yet she was able to do this, had a tremendous effect on these young people.
He shared the cross with her. That's what he did. And this church was her church.
We are going to show you the door that she would use to come into church. It's in the back of the church here.
Only the door is different. Only the enter is different. Now we enter by this door.
Right,
yeah,
but in her time they entered on, which they don't use that door anymore, but that was the door that Saint Germaine used when she was coming into church. There's so many things here in this shrine that we want to share with you.
So exciting. And it has stayed alive for over 400 years. As we told you, the revolutionaries
tried to destroy it.
Yeah. It's like what happened in the Holy Land. Knock off the heads of the saints. Bury them. Throw quicklime on them. They'll forget that she ever existed. That's very important. When there were countries where they were not allowed to have the Bible or a crucifix or go to church, all those things were taken away from them, and then they would forget about Christ. They would forget about this church that has taken care of us for 2,000 years. But the faith would not die. This is another strong sample of the faith remaining alive. And no matter what the world tries to do, these people will remember.
Now,
and I just wanted to show that there was a
young
daddy
man.
with two little children.
Two children came
explaining, yes, explaining. It goes on.
Actually,
Now,
there are many
you know,
very interesting by Saint Germain.
The devotion to this saint is so great that, now we went to Catania in Sicily for the Feast of St. Agatha, and it was a 3-day feast, and it was marvelous. Well, they do the same thing here in this little town in France. It's either 3 or 4 day feast based on when the 15th of June falls. If it falls during the week, it could be a 4-day feast. If it falls on a Sunday, then it's less. But they start on either the 11th or the 12th, and they have a festival for this saint for 3 days until the day of her feast day, which is the 15th of June.
I can't help thinking about what good could come from someone from Nazareth.
Well,
And when you look at here, it's not logical that a child that was, they had disdain, the parents.
she was a throwaway.
Yes, deformed, and just an embarrassment to her father and his wife. And look at what God had. He would not allow her to be buried. He will not allow you to forget her either.
Family, we're here at the barn. This is the barn where Saint Germaine de Pibrac lived her entire life. We'll show you the walls and the floors. This is
Just
it.
as you see it.
No, actually, it's a lot better now than it was during her lifetime because they put some cement on the sides. But this is what she lived in. And when you walk in the door, there's an odor of dampness that you get. She lived under the stairway of the barn. That's where she was allowed to live. That was all that she was allowed to have. And this was where she lived, and this is where she died. She had her sheep by her side, and when you see the pictures that we've taken of her in death, as in life, you always see the sheep at her feet. In fact, one of them, the little sheep, is kissing her foot or licking her foot. Now, to look at this, you would say to yourself, my God, how could anyone be a happy person when you live in this kind of an atmosphere, and next door your family lives in what would be considered luxury? And yet she was the happiest girl you ever saw, the happiest girl you ever met. She traded the ill treatment with kindness, the ill treatment of her stepmother with kindness.
Bob said that when you enter here, you smell dampness. They're waving at the light.
You got to walk around to get the lights on.
Yeah, there it goes. There it goes.
Okay.
I don't smell dampness. I smell flowers.
Well, now there are flowers here where there were not before. When she lived here, there were no flowers. Now we have flowers.
But they're not even alive. They're false flowers. They're
Plastic.
I smell real flowers. Those are plastic flowers. They're, all the time that Bob was talking, I was thinking of the song, Holy Ground. We're standing on holy ground.
We are.
It's amazing. It's a little church here. Without the parent knowing it, he was creating a church.
A saint.
And
the saint lived next door to these people, and they never knew it. They never knew anything about it until that time when the mother was ready to just beat her to shreds, and the flowers came out of her apron, and the people in the village were watching it. She realized that she had a saint living. Something divine was happening here.
And if you allow yourself, something divine is happening right now. So listen, see, and follow Saint-Germain. This little village has been following her, has been honoring her, has been keeping her alive for 400 years.
And she, for her part, has been aiding them, interceding for them. Miracles have taken place through her intercession for 400 years.
And they are the happiest people I have met. And so...
And there is a great devotion. We see a tremendous devotion here to this little saint. Family, we told you that all she could eat was a crust of bread that was thrown out the door from the house. She was not allowed to be in the house. She's just in that little barn. And she would eat those crusts of bread, but she would have beggars that would come to her and ask her for bread. And the little crusts of bread she had, she would give them, but it was not enough for her and them. So she would sneak into the house after everybody was gone, and she would take crusts, stuff that they were going to throw away anyway, from the kitchen and bring them out and give them to the beggars. Well, the stepmother got wind of it. She caught wind of what was going on, and she would scream at her and yell at her, and she would beat her. And she would watch for any time she could that Germaine would try to feed the beggars. And this one time, she saw her coming out of the house, and she knew, she had her apron full. She knew that there was bread in that apron, and she went after her with a stick, and all the neighbors were there, and the beggars were there. And she started beating her with that stick and saying to her, you open up, I want you to open up that apron. I want them to see what you're doing. You're trying to steal, take away from the mouths of your family. Show them the bread that you're stealing. And when she opened up the apron, what did she find?
What did she find? Roses, beautiful roses, spilling out from her apron onto the ground.
And of course, there was no keeping of a secret. They knew they had a saint in their midst.
They knew that was a miracle. And of course, the mother had to stop in her tracks. She couldn't beat up on her anymore.
Of course, she didn't have her stay in the house, but she didn't beat up on her. This is holy ground, people.
This is a very special place. All of these places have been preserved for pilgrims, and pilgrims come and they spend time here. They come on pilgrims, spend time at the barn here at the Miracle of the Roses, and the next place we're going to go is where the Corbeil River parted, and she was able to walk across it to go to church. It's a very special little town, Pibrac.
And this year, we have a surprise for our pilgrims. They don't even know it.
They're coming here.
We're going to bring them here. That's how Saint-Germain and the people here touched our hearts. So let's go continue on this pilgrimage of faith with Saint-Germain. We love you.
Love you. Family, there are two different accounts, but they match up with each other. There are two different accounts of eyewitness accounts of how she died. A priest was coming on his way to Toulouse, and apparently Pibrac at night, there were no lights anywhere. It was extremely dark, and so he could not make his way through the town to head towards Toulouse. And all of a sudden he saw a bright light over this barn, and he saw angels going up and down from heaven down to the barn, and he saw a young virgin rising up into heaven. And so he said, I've got to stay here till tomorrow and find out what that's all about. On the other side were two monks coming from Toulouse heading the other way, and they also could not see anything at night. It was so dark. And so they took haven in an old abandoned castle, so they'd stay there for the night and then continue on their way. And they saw the same thing. They saw these angels coming up and down from this barn, and a young virgin
rising up with them.
Rising up into heaven. And so the next morning they asked all the townspeople about what could this be? Who could this be? Nobody knew what they were talking about until they talked about it was a young virgin. They said, oh, that must be Germaine. She's the saintly girl we have in this town. And they went to the barn where that's up above us. They went to the barn where she lived, and they found her father kneeling at her body, as she was laying there, and he was crying because his daughter had died. It's a beautiful story, and it just tells where this girl went as soon as she died. She went immediately up into heaven. So the mother, this is when she started to soften towards the girl, put on a beautiful gown for her for the burial. Where before that she had been in rags pretty much all her life, but she gave her this beautiful outfit for her burial.
You know, when she died, though, she wasn't really left alone. She did have little mourners, and those were her friends, the sheep.
The sheep, yeah.
Those she had lived with, she died with. But she has been remembered and is still remembered till today. When you look on that wall over there, you will see plaques of thanksgiving.
And you look here, and you'll see the same.
Here.
Thanksgiving to Saint Germain for favors, petitions answered, for favors requested. We had a man just now a senior citizen, come on a bike up so he could go over to the shrine of Saint Germain and pray there.
But Jean-Pierre tells me that not only were these remembrances of thanksgiving for favors received here, but all over the church.
They were all over the church at one time.
And then when they went to clean the walls, they removed them, and they're all, and
just these were
this
left.
is what is left to be seen.
Okay.
Giving thanks, that's what it is. Thanksgiving, merci, remembrance of her intercession.
Now,
so
we believe,
you got a good saint to pray to.
We believe here in the church was where her body was buried in 1601 when she died, and forgotten pretty much because she was buried under the altar. She was forgotten for 43 years. And in 1643, when they wanted to make one of the families of the parish wanted to be buried under the altar, they opened up that part of the floor to bury her and found the body of this girl. And at the beginning, nobody knew who she was because it was 43 years later. And many of the people that knew her when she was alive, her parents were dead. Many of the people that knew her had either moved away or grown up and forgotten about this story. But all of a sudden, some of her relatives came forth and told the story of this girl who was considered a saint in her lifetime. And that's when originally the body was put over here, right here in the vestibule of the church, until one of the rich parishioners objected to it. He said it was not right to have a dead body in the vestibule of the church, and so they put her in the rectory. But then the rich man's wife, Madame
de
Beauregard, a noble of the town, felt sick. She and her daughter, both of them, were terribly, terribly ill.
They were dying.
They were dying. And what happened? What did the man do then, Miss Penny?
Well, then
he turned around completely.
He no longer felt that it was not apropos. But is that when he made the shrine?
No, it was after. No. Then he prayed for the healing of his wife.
Yeah.
Prayed for the healing of his wife, and the wife. The way the wife tells the story is that she was dying, and Germaine came to her in her bed and put her hand over the infected part of her body, and she was immediately healed, as was her daughter. And then the husband, who was a big shot in the town, was one of her greatest supporters, and so he wanted a great shrine built to this little saint. Saint Germain's body was here and incorrupt. It had never decayed until the French Revolution. And so that was like 190 years later, after her death, when the revolutionaries came and they decided that this was so much garbage, and they just had to get rid of this body. And so they took the body and they dug a pit and threw it in the pit with quicklime. Now, quicklime immediately disintegrates flesh, bone, anything like that. And she was kept there for 3 years until the revolution was over. And then the people of the town went to get her body and found that the bones and ligaments that were there were still intact, and they had not decomposed, they had not dissolved.
How many years was that?
3 years
3 years?
after the revolution started, and so they made this reliquary for her.
A thought came
Well, they
to
put her in a box. I'm sorry, they put her in a box. They put her in a box,
Yeah.
and then when she was canonized, they took
beatified.
beatified. They took the remains out of the box and they put them in the shrine that you see here now, and the box is underneath. That same box that she was put in at the end of the French Revolution is underneath.
You know, Bob said they considered her body just so much junk. No, I don't think so. They were afraid of her body. And the same thing is happening today and has been happening for generations. Take away any example of God's power, of God's love, his everlasting love.
God's mercy.
And so she was born for, as we can see, for more than that moment, for more than that time. She was born to be for all of us.
Family, the devotion to Saint Germain has been so great, and the throngs of pilgrims going to her shrine so huge that a basilica had to be built to accommodate the crush of pilgrims who come at all times of the year, but especially for her feast day. It took 64 years to build, beginning on the 300th anniversary of her death in 1901, and was completed in 1965.
Pray for the intercession of Saint Germain. She will help. Love you.
Love you. God bless you.
Thank you, family, for watching. This is just one of over 200 books and videos available here at Journeys of Faith.
Now, these are perfect tools for evangelization, and give them as gifts for birthdays, confirmations, First Holy Communion. Anytime you think of a gift, give one of these tools of evangelization. Write us at the address on our screen, or call us in the United States at 1-800-633-2484.
We love you.